I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today because we are looking at the Foxeer Box. You want to know if it's a GoPro Killer, don't you? Is it a GoPro Killer? Is the Foxeer Box the GoPro Killer? Well, forget about it because I'm not going to tell you. Stay tuned. It seems like every time a new action camera comes out for FPV, everybody asks, ooh, is it a GoPro Killer? Like we're all just waiting for finally someone came along and killed GoPro, right? Like the giant at the top of a beanstalk, and we all want his goose. I don't carry this metaphor too far. I may even be guilty of this thing that YouTubers do where they sort of ask the rhetorical question, GoPro Killer? Is the Runcam Split the new GoPro Killer? Is the Runcam 3 the new GoPro Killer? And then, you know, the answer is always no, it's not a GoPro Killer. And so I'm not going there this time and hopefully ever again. Let's just judge this camera on its own merits. And yeah, I'm going to be comparing it to a GoPro, but you know what? Nothing's a GoPro Killer. If you could make a GoPro for $150, well, you can't. I mean, we all wish somebody would, but nobody's going to. So let's just see how it stacks up and see if it's worth the asking price of about, I think it's $160. Let's find out. And unlike what I usually do, where I drone on for a long time about the specs and the analysis and the learning and the facts, I'm just going to start by showing you some freaking footage. So let's just do that. I see your true colors. That's why I know. That's a great movie. I'm not going to apologize. The footage we're about to watch is 4K footage, so if you're not watching in 4K right now, go down to the lower right to the gear icon and change to 4K, or you won't be able to see the full resolution the camera is capable of. So that was 4K 30. Now let's take a look at 1080p 60, which I think is more like most people are going to be recording in. Certainly most people are going to be watching in 1080p. Here you go. When I did my testing to find the best GoPro settings for YouTube uploading, I concluded that 2.7K was the best. Well, anyway, you can watch that whole playlist if you want to. So now here finally is the 2.7K footage. 2.7K at 30 frames per second. The cameras are not capable of doing 2.7K 60. So you got to decide 1080p 60 or 2.7K 30 resolution or frame rate. Here's your footage. Now at this point, some of you have decided you've seen enough. That footage alone convinced you that the box is the right camera for you and you're ready to buy. And by the way, if that's the case, I've got a link to the product down in the video description. If you have decided just based on the footage that the box is pretty good, I don't blame you. I kind of agree. When I looked at the Runcam 3, I thought the Runcam 3 footage was like really sharp and I kind of liked that. And the colors were really vivid and I kind of didn't like that. But overall, I felt like the GoPro was better, especially once you upload to YouTube, and the hyper sharpness of the Runcam 3 just got completely destroyed by YouTube's compression. Whereas the box footage, it has the same kind of motion blur that the GoPro does. The color is not exactly the same. It's still got a little bit of that weird, really blueness to it, whereas the GoPro is a little bit redder. Some people in my Runcam video said that they were like real colorists and stuff, and they said that the GoPro actually looked really badly warm and not accurate at all. So maybe that redness is bad, not good. Well, it's up to you, of course, and you can always try to fix it in post. By the way, the footage you're seeing has not been touched at all in post. Oh, and if you really want to see the original footage, I've got a link down in the video description. You can download the raw files that I came straight out of the camera, and you can of course see for yourself exactly what it looks like with as much detail as you want. So the footage from the box, I think it is very close to the GoPro, especially when you're looking at video. I'm going to show you some stills a little later and show you there's a few artifacts that the box has when you're really looking up close, but in motion, I think they're very comparable. And the microphone on the box is, well, let's say that it's not terrible, and that's saying a lot, given that like literally every camera other than GoPro, going all the way back to the Xiaomi Yi and the Mobius, has had a terrible, terrible audio. The box it's different than the GoPro, but it's not garbage. It's not totally distorted, and seems to do an okay job. So now let's take a look at the camera up close. And the build quality of the camera is quite good. I can't, of course, speak to its long-term durability. That will only be discovered after people start buying them and crashing them. But overall, nothing jumps out as obviously defective. I like the fact that we've got the screws here. I guess they're torque screws, and presumably that means that this front cover is replaceable, although I'm not sure if I could find a listing to it. The cover right here covers the SD card slot and the USB and the HDMI out. So one nice thing about this camera is that it does have a micro HDMI out, which I think on the GoPro you need an adapter for that. So that's nice if you're ever going to output to a television, for example. One thing that's sort of baffling is that it does have a mini USB cable. It doesn't even make, I mean, why not a micro? I barely even have any mini cables. So I don't even know why you would do that on a camera like this. But there you go. If you do get one of these, of course it comes with a USB cable, but you're probably going to want to get some more cables or adapters to charge it with. What's up, Foxeer? I don't know. The cover stays in place when you're flying and crashing. I haven't had it pop open or anything like that. So good. Buttons on the side, there's a power button, and then there's a start-stop button, and that also turns the Wi-Fi on. So this does have a Wi-Fi app, and the app is decent. It's not quite as polished as GoPro's app. For example, one thing that jumps out is that GoPro's app will automatically detect the presence of the camera and then connect to it with Wi-Fi or Bluetooth as need be. With this one, you have to manually, in your phone, connect to the Wi-Fi network, and then you can connect to the camera. But overall, I found the app pretty easy to use to set the resolution and other settings in the camera. Putting the two cameras together, we can see that the box is just a little bit larger than the Session. And there are those who will say, oh, well, that's probably to avoid the lawsuit from the design patent that's killed the Runcam 3. I'm told by someone who thinks he knows what he's talking about that, in fact, the aspect of the Runcam 3 that was subject to the design patent was the button. I remember that person was Bruce from UBAD, and he said that on a public podcast, so I can actually attribute it to him instead of keeping it secret. Yeah, so I don't know what it was about the button on the Runcam 3 that GoPro felt infringed, but it wasn't the size of them or the fact, apparently, that the Runcam fit the GoPro cases mostly that was an issue. Nevertheless, the Foxeer Box does not fit GoPro cases. You can see it's substantially bigger. That's not going to really matter when you're flying. That extra few millimeters isn't going to really matter, but it does mean that you're going to have to get box-specific 3D printed cases, which I'm sure people will be making any minute now. Another thing that jumps out, and this is important, is the Session has this LCD screen, and that's really nice. LCD? LED? Oh, damn. That's really nice to have for adjusting settings in the field. You can just power it up, and you can camera settings. You can change your resolution. You can turn image stabilization on or off. Of course, you can do that through the app, and that's the way you're usually going to do it. But it is really nice to be able to do that just quickly if you need to. It's also really nice to be able to verify when you start recording what the settings are. Now, that's not something you can do on the box without going into the Wi-Fi app. I do have a few complaints about the box. One of them is the bitrate it uses. So if we, for example, take 1080p footage, the box uses 30 megabits per second, that's okay, but the Hero5 Session uses 45 megabits per second. And I do feel like that additional bitrate, it matters under some conditions. If you're looking for just the absolute best quality video to upload to YouTube, you're obviously going to want that extra bitrate, and you're going to want a Hero5 Session. Another complaint about the box, and I have to thank the guys on RC Groups for discovering this. Of course, before I did the review, I tried to do my research, and one of the things I did was I checked out the RC Groups thread for the camera. And one of the things they discovered was that the 1080p 120 frame per second setting on the box, that's a setting that many people would use to get nice slow-mo shots, right? Smooth slow-mo shots. It's not actually doing a real 120 frames per second. It's doing frame doubling, so it looks really jerky, and it just looks like it's garbage. There's no point to doing 120 frames per second if you're just going to do frame doubling, because that's not really 120 frames per second. So if you're counting on using that 1080p 120 mode on this camera, don't. It's no good. And thanks to RC Shim, who did a review of this camera, for pointing out that you can do 720p at 120 frames per second, and it is legit 120 frames per second, but the quality is so bad that the processor in the camera just can't keep up with resizing the frames that quickly and the quality of it. So basically, this is not, functionally speaking, a 120 frame per second camera. Oh, right, there's one more thing that I got to tell you. So I did a test where I just left the camera running to do the battery test. And by the way, the battery life on it was about 30 minutes. But I don't actually know what the battery life was because I left the camera recording, and when it ran out of battery and shut off, the final recording was corrupted. And since it had been recording for like a half hour, it was like one recording that was 2 gig, and then it split the recording, and then another recording that was, and I just estimated how the time from how big the recording was, right? And it got about 30 minutes battery life, but the actual final recording couldn't be viewed. So I don't know if that's going to be generally true, but at least in this case, when the camera shuts off because the battery was no good, the battery ran down, the recording was corrupted. So what's the final word on the Foxeer Box? Should you buy it? That's the question you're all asking. I've been using the box as my primary HD camera for a few weeks now, and I gotta say, I haven't had a single thing about it that I found to be like a deal breaker. There are other cameras I've reviewed where I say, yeah, it's good for the price, but you won't catch me using it, and I would save up and spend more personally to get a better camera. Foxeer Box, it comes in at, I've looked it up, $169, $170, and at that price, yeah, it's not bad. But you got to ask yourself a few questions. Well, first of all, do you want to save up like to $300 and get a Hero5 Session? The Hero5 Session is just a better camera. I think the video it puts out is better, although it's close. But the ability to have things like Pro Tune and other GoPro specific features gives it the edge for me. But you know, that's a pretty big chunk of money. The other question you kind of got to ask is, what about the Hero 4 Session? You can get a refurbished Hero 4 Session for only $140. Now, it's not going to do 4K. It's not going to do a whole bunch of other things, but do you really care about 4K? I got to tell you, I feel like 4K is largely a marketing thing for most of us. People aren't really watching 4K video very much, and people aren't really producing a lot of 4K video. It's just, you know, so the fact that the Hero 4 doesn't do 4K, maybe not that big a deal. And it does have those GoPro specific features like Pro Tune, which maybe is something you want. But overall, I really do feel like the box hits a really nice spot at $170. Is it a GoPro Killer? Well, it's as close to a GoPro Killer as anything I think I've seen. And by that, I guess what I mean is that there's some people out there who are going to have a real hard time saving up $300 to get a GoPro, a Hero5 Session. And this camera seems like it's, you know, 80%, 85% of what a Hero5 Session brings to a table. And if you're not using all those fancy, you know, Pro Tune and all those other features, maybe it's 100% of what the GoPro would bring to the table for you at a much lower price. There you go. Product links are down in the video description as usual. And yeah, they're affiliate links because of course they are, duh. Thanks to Foxeer for sending this camera along. Yet they provided it for review. And I think that's all the disclaimers that I've got out of the way. Hope you enjoyed the video. You got any questions or anything you feel like I left out? Yeah, let me know down in the comments. And as always, happy flying.